Welcome back to another episode of the Hobby Chop Podcast, the podcast for the people. If you have questions you want answered or ideas or episode topics, check out the Hobby Chop Podcast Facebook group. It's a mouthful already. Or message us, any of us, on IG. Ask your questions. Your idea just may be the next episode. Welcome. How is everyone doing? You got me tonight, Big Ken. We got Tyler and Zip. Fellas, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well, recovering from the weekend still, it feels like.
You were up in Quincy. I'm going to have you give us a little recap of that show in a minute, but we'll check in with Zip first. See how you doing.
Doing good. Just messaging people for cards online. That's the hobby for me lately. That's what it seems like. So
really, after everything we've talked about for a week with this Caitlin Clark, Kate Martin, dual auto, gold, PSA 10 on eBay, you're going to be like, yeah, I'm just messaging people for cards. Got nothing to say about that card.
It's on auction. I try not to pay attention to it or else my blood pressure spikes. It's quite, you talk about like doing expensive rips like for a thrill, right? Like people love doing that. Try putting the biggest card you've ever had, which for me it's the biggest card I've ever had. Not that that's like huge or anything, but for me it is. And just letting it run. That's a thrill. Yeah, I'm feeling it. Feeling the pressure a little bit.
That's way too scary. I did that with an Ovechkin card, and I put it out. I gave it to somebody to put, one of the online eBay auctions, and it was out of my control. And I sat back and I let it go, and probably wish I had that card now because it's probably twice as much with him, almost on the verge of breaking the record. But even at that time, that was probably one of the biggest cards I had in my PC that I wanted to move. I remember that feeling, and that was a 10-day. And I remember checking it like 18 times a day, just going on and looking and checking and looking and seeing where the price was on it. I was like, oh, and the crazy thing was, it was in the last 5 minutes and probably the last minute and a half, that thing went from like 800 up to like $5,000. Right. It was just crazy where it went.
Yeah. Like, and with that being said, not to totally make the intro about me and this card, I feel like it's had a good little start. There's still over 5 days left. It's already above $2,000. The PSA 9 gold courtside of Caitlin Clark just did 4,800, which is 1,200 higher than what it sold in November, which same grade, same card. Like that's a huge, that's like, a 25% increase just about. And yeah, I hope all those people that were messaging me about super interested in the card, they start hitting bid. It wasn't just blowing smoke, I hope they show up with their wallets, or else it is what it is. But I'm not going to mention anything now, but I may have another cool Caitlin Clark coming soon.
Nice. Yeah. So while I was spending time with the grandkids down in North Carolina this weekend, did nothing with the hobby. I didn't even get over to Cardiac Cards. I was so busy with the kids over there. Tyler, you were at Quincy show holding it down for us. Want to talk a little bit about a little recap of that episode?
Yeah, so I did the Northeast Card Expo in Quincy. Held at the Quincy Marriott, which was a great location. My first time not only setting up at the show, but my first time at the show in general. I've always heard really good things about it throughout my time back in the hobby, and it lived up to the billing. First of all, Ken, you and I have talked a lot of times about how the location can make the show, and it's a Marriott hotel with the ballrooms and the adjacent rooms right there just off the lobby. That's where the show is. 30-second walk from the show to the hotel lobby to the elevators. Pulled right up, load in, load out. So, eat from a vendor perspective, very well ran event, fantastic. But yeah, you got there really early Saturday morning. VIP opened at 9 o'clock. regular door at 9:30, and we didn't even get to that point before I was already had about 2/3 of a case sold. So flipped through the case once by about 10 a.m. Flipped through the case a second time before Saturday was over. So by the time we got to Sunday, I had just the remakings of a brand new case. And if you look in my Zion case over here, I have probably the least amount of cards that I've had in a long, long time. So we're back in full buying mode. It felt a lot like coming back from Atlanta.
Yeah.
From an inventory perspective. So we'll be fast and furious back at it this weekend. We're in Chicopee, but yeah, the show was really good. Very strong traffic wise all day. Saturday, from the moment the doors opened at 9 o'clock, I turned to Howard at one point, and it was like 1 o'clock, and I said, I can't believe it's 1 o'clock. And that was the first time that I had stopped, and I was, not only just selling through stuff. I bought probably 40 or 50 cards, throughout the weekend. Most of them already gone, but it lived up to its billing. Really good traffic, really well set up, money being spent, deals being done.
Who? I'm going to jump in. Who is your biggest customer? I mean, most of the time we talk about at these shows, it's the flippers that are coming in, and it's flippers and repackers that are buying the most amount. At this show, was it the same? Did you find that there were just a more diverse group buying, or was it more?
So it was a pretty good mix. Probably 4 of the bigger dollar amount deals that I did were to somebody buying for a repack or somebody who owned a repack. Now, again, going into the show, I knew that was going to happen immediately on Saturday morning. I'd already kind of planned for it. I had, I think 9 either downtowns or kabooms just sitting right there in the middle of the case with some other liquid autos. And I just knew that those were going to go as soon as somebody saw them. And as I was setting up, I just put them in there, and they walked by, and I said, here's the cash percentage to take them. And they were gone. So, that was part of it, just as there any show. And I sold to one guy walking who was buying for repacks, 3 different deals across twice on Saturday and once again on Sunday. And that's just new inventory after I flipped through the cases. But I did 2 massive trade deals over the weekend. One was I bought a Brady Bowman Chrome rookie BGS 9.5. Had it in the case for like 10 minutes, and guy walked up and wanted to offer some cards and cash for that card, and that was just a collector. That was not a flipper. So took us
Quincy, Massachusetts is a pretty good place to have a gem mint Brady rookie. Yeah.
The interesting thing is one of the cards I took in on the trade was a really high quality optic Tatum rookie. Not a single person asked about that card after I took it in. So that was really interesting to me. Some of the Tatum stuff, I had a couple other Tatum items, and they weren't really hot off the market. I actually had a Larry Bird card in the case the entire weekend, and nobody asked about it a single time, which was very strange to me. So that was those were some of the strange items. And then I did another really nice big trade for a Jordan insert near the end of the day on Sunday before I packed up and went home, where I traded some hot, I definitely will, as we go forward in the summer, Justin Fields is going to have some heat behind him, as crazy as that sounds. It's already here. I've flipped multiple Justin Fields cards, as wild as it sounds, for large profits, and somebody was very willing to take a flawless out of 5 auto Justin Fields in a trade for a very rare Jordan insert, which is crazy to me, but I was happy to be on the receiving end of the Jordan insert.
Will that Jordan end up in your PC, or will that?
No, it's already gone. It's shipped out today. But it's just the cycle's already starting, right? With a few people, and it'll just heat up as the summer goes on, as we move it deeper into the summer. But there's already some weird lanes that are going to take place in the hobby just based on the weekend. Because I also picked up a Justin Fields White Sparkle, and there it was. I had half a dozen people ask me about that card.
Every year we're like, we're not going to fall for that trick again. And every year we're out there buying Justin Fields again.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing I would say about the definitely, as you'd expect, the Drake May stuff was there. A lot of people asking about the Jaden Daniels. So those liquid cards are still holding pretty strong. I took 4 of those in on a trade for a Mahomes rookie patch, which was at one point, and those didn't last very long. So, and they actually all went to, interesting. Those didn't even, by the time the repackers got to me, those were gone before they got back.
That's the same thing that happened at Causeway, though, right? I mean, the repackers came early, and then it circled back around later in the day. And as we were buying stuff, they came back, and they were, came back for a second trip, the second buying trip, of stuff that we've already purchased. But again, you've got to get those at a good percentage, right? You know what the percentage they're paying, and you're dictating what you're buying it at, right? To know what your percentages are on, what you're going to sell it for. And once it comes in, you have a good idea of what it's going out at.
Yeah. The other thing I'll say real quick to wrap up the show, just beyond, my experiences buying and selling, is the show was very diverse. It was really, a lot of really cool cards in the room, and not just overflowing with Boston items, right? Obviously, there was plenty of cool Brady stuff in there, but I saw 252 Topps mantles in the room, plenty of 86 Fleer Jordans in the room, just a good variety of some vintage dealers, some modern. If you wanted 90s inserts, there was plenty of different tables that had those as well. So a really strong mix of that stuff all throughout the show. One thing that I did appreciate about the show is we've done a couple shows recently, a bit larger shows, and they didn't have anybody set up who had a lot of supplies. And he had a good, George, the main guy who puts the show on along with his brothers. They had a couple of those guys in the room, which I think is always very helpful. Just kind of as a kind of a different call out there. But and then I found some cool cards for the PC. I bought the entire members only Beam Team set, all in PSA 8s. The dealer had the entire set in PSA 8s, and so I bought that as a PC item, and picked up 2 Andrew Luck RPA booklets that I never expected to see in Boston, and I was very excited to find those, and a Peyton Manning Topps Gold rookie card. So
Andrew Luck, he's is it president or director of football operations at Stanford?
Yeah, I think they're general manager of football operations. Just hired Frank Reich, actually. They're back together.
I just see I see him I bet he could be really successful doing that with that brain in his head there. He's brilliant. So yeah, absolutely. That's exciting. That's cool.
But yeah, cool show in general. Lived up to the billing, had all the makings, everything you want in a good show. Not surprising. Those guys for the Northeast Card Expo do a really good job. All their shows are.
And I think Quincy is probably their most successful show.
It is. We'll be excited to be. Their Marlboro show was very good last year too, so I'm excited to, be there.
I think the Marlboro show is the first time they did Marlboro.
It is, and I think it just is. It gets far enough west that it grabs a few different people.
Yeah.
Because actually at the Marlboro show last year, We the Hobby made an appearance. They had a booth set up.
Oh, I went to that one then. That was the one I went to. And they also had food trucks outside. Is that right?
Yes, they did.
That's what makes a good show, guys. Yeah. Food truck.
Food trucks. All right. Well, so moving along here, Zip, I'll let you take the next one, eBay and PSA. Before I go into my I hate PSA rant, I'll let you talk first.
Yeah. So I tried looking into it a little more, just seeing headlines. I don't know if you guys picked up any more information. So it seems, and Tyler, Ken, please correct me if I'm wrong. Just butt in if I say something wrong. It seems that now, so obviously it's cards over $250 that you purchase on eBay that are not graded. Or if they are graded, they'll authenticate the slab, not necessarily the card in the slab, but authenticate the slab, which is weird in itself. Now you have the opportunity to, or going forward, it's going to be the opportunity to then have PSA authenticate your card, and then you can send it to grading. So my question is it an authentication, or is PSA going to quote unquote authenticate it and pre-grade it? Like, is there going to be a threshold that a raw card, like how beat up is it that PSA is going to be like, well, they bought it, they spent their money, I guess they're going to grade it, and it's a 7 or it's a 6, right? Like what is that threshold going to be with the authenticity guarantee? Because if they're just going to authenticate it, like I know Ken, me and you, we grade a lot. I know Tyler, you have graded. You don't grade probably nearly as much as me and Ken. Fair?
Yeah,
Fair to say? Yeah.
for sure. I only grade
Like,
larger items.
you're right. So like dimples, nail marks in the bag, so many things you can't pick up in pictures.
What are we doing? What are we doing here, right? I saw one of these cards. We talked about this. I had a 1-of-1 card that I sold on eBay. I had 19 pictures of the card, edges, surface, everything else, right? The guy buys the card, it goes to authentication, and then I get a note saying the card's being I get a message, the card's being returned, that they notified the buyer that there was a dimple on the card, and the buyer didn't want, I didn't list in the description there was a dimple on the card, and the guys, and they were sending the card back to me. And now I've been inundated with messages from the guys saying, well, I still want the card, but I'll pay you half price for it, or I'll buy it for cheaper. And I'm like, no. I mean, when I got the card back, I put it back underneath the microscope. I had to look at their pictures where it was to find the dimple, because that's right. I've sent the card off to grading. I guarantee that card's coming back a 9 or better. Right. Yep. There was no reason why that card should have been sent back to me. And every card has some kind of imperfection on it. Even the 10s, there is something on that card. So when I look back at thinking of what's going on here, so what am I? So say I've got a card, listed a card. Do I say it's going to get an 8 or better? And who am I to say that this card is an 8 or a better, or a 7 or better? I mean, I'm not a PSA grader. I don't know what they're doing over there, right? So, I mean, I don't understand this whole thing. And I guarantee there's just going to be a ton of problems with it.
Yeah, and grading is subjective. Like, that's the whole purpose of it, is like you're paying for a third party subjective opinion that's deemed experienced in their subjective opinion. That's like what we're doing. Like, and so it just seems like it's going to cause a lot of headaches. That's all I'm going to say. Like, we buy a lot of raw to grade, Ken, and like I don't know about you, I buy with the hopes it has a chance to grade well. I never buy something expecting it to be perfect. Like, so I don't know. I'm interested to see how, like, they better have some like detailed parameters and rules when this goes into effect, or else it's going to be an absolute shit show. Honestly,
I believe it's in effect as of today.
Oh, great!
But so there are a few other parameters and rules. So
sweet.
The card has to be non-auto. So
okay.
That will not grade autos. The listing has to have 2 or more pictures. So basically, they're requiring, at least requiring a front and a back, so that you could zoom in and try to examine the card the best you can. I mean, really, let's be honest with it. It's not about anything other than trying to create some convenience, which may work for some people, but it's just eBay acting as a group submitter. That's literally what it is.
And not to cut you off, but if you buy a card and you're like, wow, I really like this card and I'd like to get it graded, right? So you buy the card on eBay. What is your thought? What are you thinking if you say, yes, I want you to, it's authenticated, I want you to grade it. In your mind, are you thinking, oh, I hope it's a 10 or I hope it's not a 7? Like, what are you thinking? And if the card comes back a 7 or the card comes back an 8, are you going to be like, oh, this is garbage, I don't want this card? Like,
Well,
And with those details also, Tyler, sorry, I think regardless of what the grade is, once it's graded, that's final sale, correct?
it is. It is final
So
sale.
that sucks. Like,
So I think a couple of things, right? Like for the three of us, we're probably never using the service.
correct.
Right? It just doesn't make sense for us because we're going to be worried about the grade matters more when it comes to selling the card once it's graded, so a fingerprint, etc. But if you're the average collector on there and you just buy a card, let's make it up. I'm just going to buy a random Derek Jeter insert card that, even in a PSA 10 might be $150, and a PSA 9 it might be $65. But I'm a collector and I just want it slabbed, right? I don't really care. If it's a 10, great. I'm pumped. If it's a 9, it's still in a PSA holder and I'm happy. So that's because that kind of person is not going to be experienced wiping the card down, may not have a card saver at home to send it into, or might have to do a ton of work to figure out even how to ship the card to PSA. This just allows them to turn that raw card into a slabbed copy by the time they get it at their house. So for that collector, sure, it's a great service option. For anybody who's probably buying and selling as a business, it's not something that's ever going to be used.
Yeah,
I hear that, but I just think if I'm that collector and I buy it and it gets a 7, I'm like, what the hell did I just do? Even if I'm like you say, like the average collector, like you can count to 10. 7's not that great. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like it seems like for that average collector, it could exploit that average collector.
And I would hope
that's what I hear.
I hope there's some kind of prep involved. Hope someone's going to look at the card and wipe it down and
Yeah.
just to make sure that there's no, lint on it or fingerprints or last night's dinner.
Because your anecdote is very optimistic, I would say.
Well, no, I mean, I would say from this, like I've got a probably 40 King Griffey Jr. inserts over there that I sent in, knowing that they weren't going to grade above an 8 at best. But there was and they're not, and it actually, I lose money by encapsulating them than put in a PSA slab, but I want them in a PSA slab. And I think there is way more people out there that are using eBay that care about that than probably the very narrow focus that we're approaching the subject from.
Yeah, fair.
So I think that's it's just a convenience thing, and it's totally optional. It's not like you have to do it. It's just, for certain people, you're never going to use it, but for the average Joe who's doing it, that might be a good option for them. It's at least a nice to have.
Yeah.
I guess that's the way that I look at it.
Well, I wish all the average Joes good luck.
All right, moving on. Let's bring in tonight's listener spotlight guest. So we're going to bring in Bob at 7th Inning Stretch Rockaway. Welcome, Bob, our listener spotlight today. How you doing?
All right. Thanks for having me, guys. I'm enjoying the format and happy to join you tonight.
Yeah, super excited you're here. So just before you ask your question, tell us who you are, what your lane is in the hobby.
Yeah. Longer story short, I collected as a kid. My brother and I went to our local shop up north of Syracuse called 7th Inning Stretch. And it was, for us, it was like, it meant so much to us that the owner was there with us all the time. And he was super nice to us and kind of had that community feel. So I kind of came back into the hobby right before COVID. The story of you're an adult and you have money now,
Yeah.
and got lucky selling some cards at just the right time. And moving out to Rockaway, Queens, there's nothing out here in the hobby. There's no card shops. There's nobody doing meetups. There's just nothing. So aside from eBay, I was finding myself just kind of isolated out here. And I said, I really think there's other people like me that want to get together. So I started to just do a trade night. I'm like, let's just see what happens, a Wednesday night, and got a couple of people together. And that was 2.5 years ago. So kind of little by little, just growing a collecting community out here. And I raise money for local charities along the way. So raised over $1,000 to contribute over the last 2 years. And now I've got a cool little community show of 35 tables I do a few times a year. So having a lot of fun with it.
Nice.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
How now you said a couple times a year. It's like 4 times a year you do that show?
Yeah, I do 3 to 4 times a year this year, and do little trade nights also a few times.
Nice.
And I've had a great response. I had 250 people at the last one in January.
Wow.
And got another one coming up June 8th. So I'm excited about it.
Nice.
Nice.
And where do you hold the show?
It's the VFW style. It's at a Knights of Columbus.
Mhm.
But I take note on what you said last week. I got to look at the bathrooms and see how good they are. That was a great tip. I think it's a big deal.
That's funny. All right, Bob. So what's your question?
Sure. So what I'm seeing a lot of is you've got tops and fanatics, right, going at it in this last little bit of time while Panini has the licenses. But you've got exclusive autograph contracts with guys like Bryce Young and Jaden Daniels. So how does that affect which cards you guys collect? Do you go for the unlicensed autographed big rookie, or the licensed stuff that's, doesn't have any autographs?
Well, I know for me, and I'm going to start out, is when you say collect. Now, a lot of this rookie stuff, it's more of a flip for me. I'm buying who can I buy that I'm going to make the most profit on, right? Because that's really what it comes down to. Because my lane in the hobby is whoever I buy of these rookie quarterbacks, they all need to be sold by August, right? A kind of a reset in August, because as soon as they start playing, it becomes a whole different story. There's just a lot of buildup between now and then. So really, we look at who is the most exciting. For me, I look at who everybody's trying to buy, number one, and who has the most potential. So obviously the Jaden Daniels, no matter where you're getting it, right? His market seems to be really high right now. But then I look at like a JJ McCarthy, right? Who they're saying he's going to be the starter. They're going to name him the starter in Minnesota. So as these months go on, I think that his value will go up. And again, I think Prism is what everybody wants, right? And a lot of it, like even last year we saw with CJ Stroud, like people would rather buy the Prism cards with no auto and pay that, the premiums on those cards versus the non-licensed auto. Although they were selling, I just think the premium was still on Prism. Kind of have a feeling that that's still going to be the same. My opinion, that I think that's still going to be the same this year.
Yeah, it changes my approach, right? Like I'll reference back to basketball last year with Wimby. As much as as hyped as anybody's probably ever been, most cards graded across the board, and never once have I found myself wanting to buy a Wimby auto because it's not licensed, and that's just how my brain works. And then thinking about the way football was with CJ last year, I think it just pushed me to being more willing to take risk on Prism low numbered cards and push, and I would personally attack it and just assume that in the long run it's good. It could end up being his biggest card because he doesn't have a licensed auto, and kind of the same approach with Jaden Daniels this year. But I think that they set apart. For example, I just basically won't buy any Bo Nix. I just find myself gravitating towards buying more and more Michael Penix because I can buy autos, I can buy RPAs when Flawless and National Treasures come out. That's what I'll be trying to get my hands on, because that's ultimately that's a card that holds such a premium long term and has a chance to exponentially grow. So I think it just changes my strategy, and either makes me really aggressive on low numbered cards from a premium product, or just pushes me away from certain players.
Yeah, and I, not to like totally echo, but it really cuts out some products for some players, in my opinion. Like, you have, like, you think of the National Treasures RPA, you think, for me, a big card, especially for football, I mean, and for basketball too, is those, the on-card optic autos that are so highly coveted, those rated rookie autos. And so, like, when you kind of take those out, you end up, I think, yeah, Prism ends up being king. Not, it kind of already is. And that's kind of what it resorts to, I think. With that being said, I think the autos, especially from Topps Chrome, and like, if you're a real Topps Chrome Bowman type of guy and understand the color systems of Topps, I think there could be a real play in those, true gold autos, true red, super, those sort of colored autos for the guys who don't have licensed autos. If there was, like, so for example, like Penix and McCarthy, like, do they sign in Topps as well?
No, they do not.
Because Ladd signs them both.
Oh, really? I didn't think you could sign them both, to be honest. But I know those two do not.
I swear to God, I saw a Ladd like Topps Chrome auto and I was confused. But unless that's wrong. Anyways, if that's totally wrong, I apologize. I thought I saw a Ladd like Topps Chrome auto or Future Stars auto or something of him recently. I would just totally not touch it if they had autos in both. I would just totally go to the whatever is licensed.
Yeah.
And
I guess really only time is going to tell too, right? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, looking back on this, like, it doesn't matter, I think, what we say right now. It's just our opinion. But, what is going to be more coveted for these rookies? Like, are they going to wait till, next year when they have a licensed autograph? Are they going to consider that their rookie card, or their...
And Ladd, I just looked real quick because I want to make sure Ladd has Topps autos. So there are going to be some guys that have both. I don't know how many. I would be aware of that.
Yeah, so I guess that means he probably doesn't have an exclusive signing deal with anybody.
Yep.
It allows him to sign both places, where like Penix and McCarthy are signed to Panini. I think the other thing too is that, and you really see it with autograph heavy products, not just your Flawless and your National Treasures, but think something like Contenders, which is
for sure
totally auto driven. And I just went and looked just to see, you can buy a 2023 Contenders hobby box right now for $200. If you go back to any other past year where there's at least one significant auto, which multiple significant autos, I mean, the price is minimum double that.
Yeah.
And, if not 5-6x that. And I just kind of looked at National Treasures, Flawless, very similar, but Contenders is the one, and Optic Contenders that just really is just crushed by these autograph deals.
Yeah.
Good point. I didn't even think about that, but it's further to the point that it just kind of kills some products. Yeah.
And those are iconic products, right? From an auto perspective.
Yep, absolutely.
The single best, non-RPA autos are those autos.
Yep.
As I'm hearing you guys too, I'm thinking about timing. I was like, what products are coming out at what point? Like Topps Now had Jaden Daniels autographs before the playoffs, and then you didn't have any Prism products until so late. So there was a big premium on those Topps Now products, which otherwise I wouldn't look at.
Yeah, and even I think I mean I could say even the Don Russ stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no autos. Obviously, he doesn't have any autos on that Panini stuff, but even the Don Russ stuff was, really getting a premium on all those cards, which as soon as Prism came out, you just saw the market just start to drop on all the Don Russ stuff. I mean, his PSA 10 was selling, the Don Russ rated rookie PSA 10 was selling for like $300. Now I think it's like $60 or $70 for that card, right? So
Well, the other thing that the poaching of players for autos has done is it's really created the case hit phenomenon. Let's be honest. That's the auto is no longer guaranteed the rare chase card in a lot of premium products. So the market and the hobby had to shift somewhere else. And that's become the Kabooms, the Downtowns, the Color Blasts as really the premium card for, a lot of players. I mean, if you look at Jaden Daniels Prism Color Blast and a PSA 10, I think it's around a $15,000 card. And if you go back and look at what, the 2020 class, their rookie Color Blast sold at the time of release, I mean, it was a bit of an afterthought. Cool card, but everybody was chasing the autos in the product.
yeah.
So.
Well, thanks, Bob. Thanks for coming on, asking your question. Appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It was definitely, the question grew a lot more than I initially thought of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great question, honestly, and I think it poses a lot of questions for people when they're going through making these decisions, and they can probably apply to that to more things than just what we talked about. So,
yeah. So your next show is, you said June
8th. I'm going to plug for a second. Yeah, June 8th in Rockaway, Queens Culture Clash. So it's sports cards, Pokemon, a little bit of Funko. It's a great, fun community show.
Yeah.
And I haven't charged admission yet, so it's
nice.
even easier to get in.
Nice.
Awesome.
And just tell people, I know I called your IG out. Just tell people if they have any questions or they want to reach out to you, where they can find you.
Yeah, at 7th Inning Stretch Rockaway on Instagram. There's underscores in between it, but I'll pop up pretty easy. So definitely love talking to people and kind of chopping it up.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Love the show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
All right. That was a great question. You want to start
Yeah.
with the listener questions?
We will we'll pop into it. So first from Tom G on Instagram. Question for the pod: how much market manipulation do you think is happening with either popular cards or popular accounts between eBay cook groups, making sure items established at a set floor then mass selling to make a single cards market collapse? Then he put in parentheses, see Clyde Edwards-Helaire Mosaic rookie card, to whatnot streamers having shill accounts push their auction numbers up before items go too far under comps. It feels like there could be quite a bit of manipulation in play affecting values. How does a newer person in the hobby identify and protect themselves from these situations?
It's interesting that, and I know you're part of that WNBA cards only group, and somebody put a question up there saying that they wanted to go on Whatnot and get into some breaks on Whatnot, and they were asking people like, who can I trust? tell me where I can go that, I'll be in good hands if I go on there. And there was just this long string of just bashing going on, that and I know because I go on and I watch them, and we all know, we're all been there, and those packs and boxes and everything, and they just keep going up and up and up and up. So as much as these people are bashing, there's somebody else just to jump right in and take their spot on those. And there's no it's unregulated, right? There's absolutely, nobody overseeing what's going on there. So is it happening? I mean, to me, yeah, 100%. It's happening there. How do you feel about it? I mean, I guess you just have to try to be smart enough to stay away from things that really don't look right, and try to, find places you can trust and go in. I mean, every part of the hobby where there's no rules and regulations, anybody can do whatever they want.
Yeah. I think the one thing that I would say, if you're coming in and you're trying to figure out the value of a card and you're just simply looking at eBay sales for comps, the game that I would play as somebody brand new is I would throw out the high, I would throw out the low, and then I would average the other most 3 recent sales, because there's plenty of that that one random sale that somebody tries to use that is a total outlier that we've all dealt with. We've all seen. I've seen it on 50 cards I looked at this weekend. So that game is out there in the eBay world. And for certain players markets, you do have to be careful too and pay attention to entire players markets who get shilled. I know Trey Young is a huge market that had this problem, continues to have a little bit of this problem, which makes you just decide to basically never touch one of those cards, no matter what it looks like. And then on a whatnot, stream, for me, I just really would ever struggle to buy singles on there, because I just, from a personal perspective, I find a really hard time trusting that, because that's the one that's the easiest to manipulate to me, is that when it's selling a single, if you have somebody that works for you or whatever, or part of the account on an account that just swipes it up and then nothing ever gets shipped, where I think on, wax products and, sealed repack boxes is a little different. But the singles is something that always has scared me a little bit, and I've never bid in a singles auction because of that fear on whatnot.
And they don't make it easy either, right? I mean, the cards come so fast. There's usually 10 seconds, 15 seconds. And if you really don't know your values of those cards, you don't really know what you should be bidding on them. Right.
And then with that being said, here's an easy rule. If you don't know what you should be bidding on it, don't bid on it. Yeah. I mean, like, I'm sorry, but at some point, the accountability has to be back on the person who's buying something. Like, if you're an adult and you don't know what you are buying or why you're buying it or what it's worth, I have so much sympathy at some level. I'm gonna be honest. Like, because like for these people that are selling their stuff, I'm not sticking up for them, but like that's what they're doing. Like, the people are doing the sudden death auctions, okay? Because then everyone's sliding the bids in. There's an option on whatnot. You can put in your max bid, so you're not just gonna hit swipe and, oh my god, it's $500 instead of $55. Like, you can be an adult and do that. So
yeah, and I would just say, the sudden death auction, just avoid it. Like, I look at, the three of us look at so many cards every week and have a good idea of what values are, and we could pull up a whatnot singles auction right now, and we'd have no idea what the right dollar price was at, because the margins are so razor thin.
Yep.
That we would all just get smoked.
Yep.
Because and that's the purpose of the auction, right? Is it doesn't give you time to comp the value. Now, if you get in a singles auction and somebody's running the auction for 5 minutes, you can see go look up the value of the card. Yeah, that's somebody you trust.
Yeah.
That's the auction that you really trust.
Or even if they don't have the sudden death and they're running like the 10
60
seconds and then it
Oh,
goes
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
even that. But I would like to touch on, so like that's Whatnot. It's the Wild West. Like just like you
Tread
need,
carefully.
yeah, tread carefully, and like if you're not confident about buying something, maybe don't do it. Just simple as that. But with eBay, I know there's always a saying: if you're going to buy a card, use alt. If you're going to sell a card, use 130 point. And the reason for that is because 130 point is dog water. Okay, like if you're, I just cut them both out for the most part, and I use Card Ladder because that's the most reliable source that I'm going to have. 130 point constantly has these people who go on and accept an offer, and then it just sticks in sales data, but it's their buddy Kevin down the street who just put in this offer that's never going to get paid for, but you're going to go on 130 point because, I can see the best offer accepted, and it's false data. So that's my shtick about 130 point. I've seen it happen multiple times. Aside from that, like you had said, Trey Young, I learned Jaren Jackson Jr., also another guy who has a very shelled market. And what Tyler said of throw the highest out, throw the lowest out, that's a really good strategy. Another thing that I think Tyler would also recommend is that when you do that, instead of just looking at sales data, go look and see what that card is sitting for on eBay. Like, what could you go buy it now for? Because that's also something that will hit you right in the face.
Yeah, I think this evolves into a whole how you comp a card conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, it's getting increasingly hard because, like, even I'll tell you with Card Ladder this weekend, I was having issues where I put in a cert number and it's missing sales because eBay, I know, made a recent change that is causing some of that. I'll give you another example: is when you comp a Kaboom, the exclamation point behind the word Kaboom in the listing, will cause some sales not to show up, and you have to be very careful with how you, if you have a Kaboom and you do the cert number and the listing has the exclamation point because that's how it is in a PSA holder, it'll show up. If the listing didn't have that, it won't catch that graded copy. So that's an example.
And that requires even more knowledge to know how to get around that. Like, we probably know you put it in parentheses, right? Kaboom, and then comma, space, kaboom, exclamation, and then you'll have all of that. But like, how many people are going to know that, right?
Well,
like,
right. And it just so, just for common practice, if you're really taking it seriously and you've got to comp a lot of cards, because this question kind of evolves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Use all your resources. If you got Card Ladder, use it. If you got 130 point, use it. I know Jordan doesn't really like 130 point, but it still can help break a tie a lot of times where I see alt doesn't have it, Card Ladder is missing it, and I found it in 130 point, or I found sales, because that actually show up on eBay if undersold as well, that you can verify there. But then also go look at what is listing for a buy it now and what's it bids. Do especially on a complicated card or a card you see wide swings and comps on. Do all the points of research.
Yeah.
I'll give you my 130 point story as well and explain why I don't like it. Like, it's not just like from nowhere. I want to like tell you why too. I had a Giannis Antetokounmpo at number to 10 patch autograph from National Treasures that I was trying to sell on eBay, and someone offered me $1,400 for it, which was $500 above the last sale. But Giannis it was in the midst of like the title years and stuff like that. So I accepted it, and then he just ghosted me. And then I'm going to a show, and I did a trade for like a Ja Morant silver prism auto. It was about which was worth like $1,250, and the guy gave me like $50, so he was into this Giannis at 1,300 and was gonna grade it, and ran over to his buddy after we made the deal, like, "Oh, dude, I totally got this guy. He didn't even just see this sale on 130 point." So this dude played himself getting a card that was not paid for, that was my card. And like the stupidity of these people. Like, and it's just like, if he asked about it, I would have said, I didn't bring it up because it wasn't a real sale. So I didn't think it was data that would be applicable. But he wanted to be all high and mighty and act like he was getting one over me on it. So I just think 130. I mean, I guess, you know what? Hurts the greedy sometimes, right? So yeah, go for 130 point if you like.
Yeah. One of the other suggestions I'll make too on this is if you have a group of people in the hobby, you know, which I do, you know, put a chat together with your friends. And sometimes when I'm having trouble comping a card and I'm just not sure, I think I know, but I'm not sure, I'll throw it in the chat. Right. And then somebody may come back with a screenshot of a sale from somewhere else that I've missed or overlooked or something I didn't see. And it's been pretty important on, you know, determining whether I've purchased some cards or haven't purchased some cards. So again, it's just nice if you have people in the hobby you trust, put a chat together and just help each other out too, you know, sharing that information.
And Ken, just for something, I'm going to share my screen for the people who watch this on YouTube real quick, because I think it's valuable to show this on card ladder in general, if you use card ladder. So this is the card that I referenced, the Mahomes this weekend. And you can see I just searched Mahomes Optic Rookie Threads PSA 10. And I've got all of these sales down through here. And you will, if you search the exact same terminology on 130 point, you'll find all the sales. Now, what's interesting is what you should be able to do is I should be able to click on this card, right? And when I see here, I should be able to go same grade and pull back all of the PSA 10 sales and watch what happens. Everything between the 1026 and the 680 sale disappeared. It just cut them out.
Were those PSA 10s?
They were.
Oh.
So, which makes it, where it makes it scary is if I just do this, where I don't add the PSA 10 qualifier, and I'm going down through here, I'm looking, and or I start at the top, right? I got the 680. Oh, I see a PSA 10, and I'm here, and I go same grade. I see 680, 1026. Now that's when I bought. Actually, I bought and sold this card this weekend. This 680 sale did not exist. So the last sale that I saw was 1026. And then when I went back and I did a search like this, I've got 800. I got 961, 949, 683. It's all there, and it's very interesting. And that's just an example of, and if you search the exact same at 130 point, you'll see all of those sales. So just wanted to kind of share that with those who are watching on YouTube real quick, because I think it is just to show you what it looks like.
And it's getting harder too, right? It's getting harder. It's getting harder to know what the exact comps of cards are. And a lot of what Tom's question was there, like, how do we deal with that now? Right. I mean, you really have to try to figure out, and I know you're saying throw out the top, throw out the bottom. But realistically, we want to look at,
everything.
Similar sales, and if they're all over the place and we don't know if they're shield sales, if they were unpaid sale, and then even when we narrow it down, we still see a variation of prices, like you just saw there, run from $800 to $1,000, right? So now we're I guess we all have our own way of trying to figure out. I guess if we're buying the card, we want to go at the 800, and if we're selling the card, we want to be at the 1,000, right?
Well, and I think the throw the top and the bottom out, that can be helpful for everybody at all levels. I think it's a really helpful mechanism for people who are just starting out, because it just provides some protection for you.
Yeah.
And you kind of don't have to really have this deep understanding of the ebbs and flows of the market. But yes, the market is getting, crazy. And you two have heard me reference 2024 downtowns and kaboom, just because I do buy and sell these a lot. The wild swings that you see in these cards day over day make it next to impossible to deal with. And then when you have little changes in the way data is available, just as I just illustrated inside a card ladder there, you really have to spend some time if you're getting into this, for more than just pure collecting, where the price matters less because you just want the card. If you're trying to make a business out of this, you have to spend some time almost educating yourself around the use of the tools and these little nuances until there comes a day where there's a more perfect solution.
Yeah.
So
good. We spent a lot of time on that question.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's try to. That was a good question. It was a good question though. It led to a lot of stuff. So yeah, we'll try to rapid fire these a little bit more. From our boy Rich at Zwiddlebug Cards, with the rise of custom cards and reprints that make no indication as being such. Example, card does not explicitly say reprint or RP. What do you do to best avoid inadvertently buying one of these cards? However, if you do see a card that you know is not authentic, what, if anything, do you say to the seller of the card? Furthermore, if you do end up buying a card where the auto is a facsimile, what do you do next? Hopefully I pay goods and services and can say it's fake and send it back. Long story short for me.
Yeah, there's a lot. If you really spend time on eBay, there's a lot of people that are selling cards that are just photocopied, right? And or printed out, and they say on the bottom, that it's, a copy of the card, but it's usually in the small print. And then people buy those cards and then they come to the shows with them and you're looking at them. I know I was with Rich. We were at the last New Britain show and somebody showed up at a downtown that I don't know if it was printed out of their printer or and they said they bought it on eBay, but you could tell that there was just something wrong with the card, that it wasn't.
Who was the downtown of?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I really don't remember, and on the opposite hand too, I was just telling you guys, I got a note from PSA today, a card I bought at Mohegan Sun Show, a raw card, that, it was Ricky Pearsall, right, of all people, and it was a gold number card, and it's a fake, it's a fugazi, right? I mean, and I always say I hate to buy raw cards, you do, and I guess I'll buy cards that I think are, more mainstream, the Prism stuff and things like that. But lately, I just really haven't been. I've really been trying to buy graded cards because I certainly get nervous. I just hear stories all the time of people saying that, they're getting these cards and they're not real, or there's, they're fakes or things like that.
If they're faking Ricky Pearsall, we're all in trouble.
Well, my main comment on this is you have to be just very careful, really pay close attention. Like, nothing is worse than if you hop on eBay and just search downtown, football or whatever, and you'll see card, and you'll see a picture of a downtown, and you'll see this weird price, and it's actually somebody selling a break spot for a chance at a downtown. But they, in the image, put a Jameer Gibbs downtown, and that's in the whole description. And until you realize it's a pack spot, I can't imagine how many people buy that thinking they're purchasing the downtown, and not a spot.
Same person buying the card, sending it to PSA for authentication. All right. Next question. Greg Yazzo. Oh, I can't wait to hear Tyler on this one. What 3 QBs are sleeper buys right now? Everyone grabbing Daniels. What young QBs do you see most value for next season?
Can we go first?
Whoever wants to go first.
Dump Joe Milton.
Jordan Love. Buy all the Jordan Love. He's way too cheap, and it doesn't make it. and he's probably the best quarterback in the division. Or actually,
Yeah.
probably is the best quarterback in the division. And just buy Jordan Love. I would still buy Joe Burrow. He's way too cheap. And I'm going to go back to the well. And one of our first podcasts, I made this whole list. And the guy that I would go back to, the CJ Stroud well. You talk about too cheap, and the dude has a path to the playoffs on a freaking golden silk road. My Colts can't figure out how to put anybody with a talented roster at quarterback, so he's just going to walk to the playoffs because Trevor Lawrence is dog water, as Jordan would say.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, aka Mr. 130 point.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, those three, and I would still also think Brock, just at a fourth there, it's Brock. I think Brock Purdy is another reasonable buy.
All right, yeah, you named some good people. I'm surprised I didn't hear Mr. JJ McCarthy, but aside from that, Ken,
I think JJ McCarthy is probably still a little cheap. I think Michael Penix Jr. is very cheap right now.
For sure.
Like I look at his prices, I have a bunch of his cards, and I go out and I'm looking at prices, and I won't take them out at the shows because they're just so cheap right now. And I just think that there's so much room to grow on that. I'm on board with the Brock Purdy. I'm on board with CJ Stroud. I find Jordan Love cards to be very expensive, though. Maybe they are down to some, but I mean the Jordan Love cards that I've seen for sale, I just think that have been
the ones I think you can tap into, Ken, are. But I mean, even his Optic Hollow, I had his Optic Hollow recently, and it just sold for like $140 in a PSA 10. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you can really get into some of his autos and his RPAs so cheap that have exponential upside. Yeah. But yeah, Penix are crazy.
Jordan Love, I think, is a great choice, Tyler, because that division has a lot of question marks now. You have the change at quarterback with Minnesota, so what does that mean? Then you have the Lions gutted from their OC in DC. Like that's huge. And then the Bears, what do they look like with what Ben Johnson, right? Yeah, what do they look like with him now? No one knows. And the Packers are a team that were really banged up all year, and that's they ran out of steam in their last game. Like, so you get them healthy ideally, and they have the most like returning players, and they're a damn good roster.
Well, yeah. And Ken, your Penix point, like you can buy 3 cards of Penix's for 1 Caleb Williams, and who would you rather have going into next year with a path forward?
Yeah.
Right. If you think about chance to rack up wins and look good.
Yeah.
Just the division alone, for
right.
real.
That's what I'm saying. You've got to beat Baker Mayfield in the South.
Yeah.
That's it.
Baker may be a decent name on that list too. Actually, not saying he's as like chalk for like undervalued sleeper buys as the guys you name, but like Baker gets it done. All right, dude. And people love Baker. People love Baker.
They do, but I think when I hear this question, I think to myself, I fast forward to the end of July, and here I am heading to the National. Who do I want to have a case full of those cards? When I walk through those doors, who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the Justin Fields of 2 years ago, right? Or the CJ Stroud of last year, right? This is like, I think Joe Burrow is probably going to be a big buy, come that time. I think some of your veteran quarterbacks and there's probably going to be a handful. I mean, let's face it, the market is overrun with cards right now with a lot of these rookies. So I don't know if that price, that ceiling can really, grow with the amount of inventory that's out there. But in my mind, I think to myself, what's the most limited cards? Right? I mean, those are the cards you want to have in your hand. You want to have low numbered cards because there's not a lot of autos out there. Like I still go back to those red Pandoras, right? That came out in those Costco boxes, that those pop counts are still low comparatively to all the other cards, right? I just have a feeling those cards are going to find their way up into, a higher market. But you can't go running in there with like an optic PSA 10 or a Prism Silver. Like you've got to have something. There's got to be something that's going to differentiate those cards that are going to make them more valuable and more wanted when you get there, versus that everybody's going to be running out there with a Jaden Daniels Silver Prism type of
Yeah.
thing.
I think you gotta have somebody that has had hype before. Like I agree with you, Jordan. Like Baker, probably way undervalued a real life quarterback, but he's 7 years removed from his rookie year, and he never had this hype, right? So he's somewhat capped even in the rare cards. Where Jordan Love had all the hype from last year, so there's a way to get back to the path. And with like Love and Burrow, you have big autos. The guys like CJ and Purdy, they're still fairly young. They're even younger, so there's still that hype that's still built in there with them. And then actually probably one we didn't mention, but Jalen Hurts, even with the post Super Bowl pop, is still probably a fairly good buy because they're the NFC favorite.
It's crazy to think that that's probably right.
Yeah,
That's crazy to think.
Still too cheap.
And you look at the AFC West. I mean, Herbert, Knicks. I mean, their path to the playoffs out of there is not winning the division, right? Yeah, that's nice. A beautiful card. Yeah.
The one Herbert I own all year.
The one Herbert I got, that Black Defy, is sitting at PSA right now. So,
all right, let's keep it moving here. From Michael Virali from Sports Cards The Hobby. What are your thoughts on Fanatics? I personally think Fanatics has built a network of influencers to pump up prices of the ultra modern market. I believe they're replacing the hobby with business. I also believe the little kids are missing out because the prices are out of control. They are marketing gambling to minors. How long can they keep this pace up?
Loaded question. No, I think here's what I'll say. Right, that all those things in some capacity are 100% true, but from just the general support and eyes on the hobby that we have today, where it is moved out of the dingy LCS or the corner that it was uncool to collect cards once you went off to college, etc. That is gone, and it's because of Fanatics.
Yeah, the hobby's become a bit romanticized through Fanatics. It's been grown. I don't think it's been 10x, as Michael Rubin said, but it's grown, and it's showing that in various ways. My thoughts on Fanatics is that they're a business.
Did he just freeze up?
Yeah, Jordan froze.
Oh, he froze up.
Yeah.
I'll talk while we wait for him to come back.
Fire away, Ken.
Yeah, I think here's a guy that looked at this hobby and said, wow, this is like the Wild West. Like, there are no rules. There's no like, let's go in and just buy up everything we can buy up. And 100% it's a business, right? I mean, if he didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it, right? So I think this hobby was going to end up where it is regardless. And no, it's we want to say, hey, he's back.
I'm back.
We want to say it's for the kids, but it's really not. It's for the parents bringing the kids down there. But the parents, look, we know this stuff is not cheap. We know this stuff is not cheap. It's not like when we were kids and you sent them down for a $2 pack of cards, or a $5 this, or I mean, for me it was like 25 cents, right? But I mean, it's not like that anymore. And I mean, for these kids just to buy a blaster box, right? Let's just say a blaster box is like $40, right? I mean, is that equivalent to your $5 and my 25 cents or 50 cents or whatever it was? I don't know. Maybe it could be, but it's the parents that are shelling that money out for the kids. And if the parents don't have the money to put it out, the kids aren't in the hobby. right? I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
The one thing I'll say about Fanatics with the pricing problem is not Fanatics. The pricing problem is Panini. The Fanatics products are reasonable in all reality. Like you can walk in and there are hobby boxes of Topps baseball Heritage High number that are $79. Topps Series 1 hobby box $100. There are, and that's for a hobby box. Those are reasonable price points to the hobby, and that's Fanatics. The pricing problem is Panini. So I won't put the pricing problem on.
But it's still a lot of money for a parent to put out.
Sure, it is, but it's not. But I think that's like I can remember a hobby box being close to $100 when I was 12, 13 years old in 2000. Right, thinking about that from my age, like I can remember a hobby box being that expensive then.
Yeah.
So reality does Fanatics have very expensive products in some high-end Topps products? Absolutely they do. But their core flagship product, even when Topps Chrome, their premium product releases in baseball, it is a $210 hobby box. Could you imagine Prism releasing at $210 by Panini?
It should with what you get out of it.
Right, but it's never going to be. But it would be what Fanatics does with Topps Chrome Baseball is the equivalent of Panini releasing Prism at $210 for a hobby box. And even their jumbo box, which guarantees 3 autos, releases at around a $400 mark. And so, I guess I'll say I'll defend Fanatics from the pricing perspective. Do I think that they're doing some things to monopolize and corner the hobby? Yes, but I think a lot of it has been they've had a lot more good than negative to the hobby is what I will say about Fanatics.
Sweet. All right. Next question, since I'm back now. From Ari Baseball, Ari H. This is to you, Ken. Hey, Ken. Really love your show, especially the new hobby chop. I had a topic that I was wondering you can talk about, and that is what happens when your cards that you want to send in for grading are warped and bendy. I used to store all my cards in my office, but I noticed a few weeks ago that nearly all of the chrome and refractor cards were warped and concaved. First of all, why does this happen? Is it because the heat and humidity? Also, depending on how badly they are warped, is it still worth it to send to PSA hoping for a 10? Is there a way to fix the cards once they are warped? I've seen various methods on YouTube, like putting a blow dryer on it, but I was wondering what the hobby chop's thoughts and advice were. So I'll say really quick with the warping, I know from experience that as long as if it's just bent and there's no indents or scratches, that bend or bow of the card is not going to affect the grade.
Yeah, that just comes from storing the card not in a top loader.
Right.
Just leaving it in a box, standing up or on its side. I mean, really, any of the cards that you get really should penny sleeve and top load. And that would avoid all that stuff. I recently had a card that had a weird bend in it. And my buddies, Rich Whittlebug Cards, lent me this little contraption here that's just, two plastic discs with, so a nice mat cut on each side and some clamps. And I just put the card in there and I clamped it up and I put it in front of my heater for a couple hours. I have a little space heater and I put it on 65 degrees, about 5 feet away. And I just let it get warm, not get hot, just get warm. And I left it in there and it seemed to relax the card and just flattened it right out. So I'm sure, I haven't looked, I haven't gone on eBay. I told Rich about it. He had this, so I borrowed it from him and it worked beautifully. So I'm sure there are, people that are selling similar things out there. Once the card gets rippled, when I say rippled, it's showing a line in the card, I think that's very difficult to get out. But if the card is just curved, it's easy just to get it flat again.
And if it's not I would just say too, like, and you may have a differing opinion. If it is just a little boat, I wouldn't even mess with it. I would just send it because it shouldn't affect the grade. Yeah, that's just my opinion. Tyler, do you have any words of no? You're good on that. Okay.
I mean, Tyler, you deal a lot with vintage. I'm sure you've seen some cards in vintage that are being proved up.
Yeah, you can do a lot of the with the disc and stuff like that. Absolutely, just to help flatten the card back out. That's something you could do. There's a lot of other mechanisms that I am too scared to try, but I've seen people do with like the soaking of the cards and
Yeah.
But
I'm just laughing because in vintage, we're talking about a slight bow with no damage, and the vintage cards, oh, it's beautiful, and a dog ripped it apart. Oh, look at it, it's gorgeous. You know, like some different standards of like this little bow to like this thing was in a bike spokes, and it's a 1, but it's beautiful. You know, like so. Yeah.
And just to finish off for Ari, yes, I mean, if you get that card flat, I would certainly send it. If it looks good at all, or the corners, the edges, the surface look good, I would send it for grading. There is a chance it could gem.
Cool. And then Cyrus Tatro, how do you guys go about pricing one of ones?
Interesting question. I think you just have to look to see if that particular player has had any one-of-ones sell in other products. You have to look at like years, and then sometimes you have to break it down into where you basically bucketize or categorize players that are similar and look at what they did in their market. And sometimes when you take that, go look at what player A's out of 10 sold versus player B, figure out the percentage difference. And then especially if player A has a 101 sale and you own player B, then you can go kind of do the math and give yourself a ballpark idea. Still the hardest thing to price in the entire hobby. But you just had that's the only way about doing it.
For football or basketball, what I do is I try to look at Prism Gold sales of that or a comparable player. And like, so for example, like say Brian Thomas Jr. had his Black Finite sale and you're trying to find Xavier Worthy's Black Finite price. I would maybe go look at their gold prisms and see what the multiplier is or the difference, and then kind of maybe go off of that. That's one way you could do it.
Yep.
How about you, Ken?
Yeah, I mean, I look at comparable. I just try to look at comparable sales to, because you never know. Really, when it comes down to 101s, it's really what somebody wants to pay for it, right? I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, I recently bought a 101 card that I had no idea like what it was going to go for. It was at like $8 or $9, with a minute to go. And I like, I'm just going to throw a $325 bid on it because I don't know where it's going to go. And it was Jared Wiley, right? The 101. And then it ends up selling at $300. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this card just went for $300, right? So I pack pulled Jermaine Burton 101 card that I've had on eBay. And I put it up there for like $360.
Yeah,
I have no idea where it's supposed to go. So some guy sends me an offer for $60 on the card. I'm like, it's a 1-of-1 card. So I just tried to use a comparable price. I'm like, look, I know it's not a comparable player, but here's this guy's a tight end. And
did you see the Jared Wiley I bought?
This card went for $300. And his response was, I don't know what idiot paid that much for that card. I'm like, come on, man. but I
my God, that's great.
I understand, or understood at that moment and during this time, I realized that the 101 card for somebody who wants to be a super collector of a player, like it doesn't matter if the card's a $50 card or a $300 card. I wanted that card, and there's only one of them. And if I didn't get it, somebody else got it. And that was his only 1-of-1 card. Right. So I'm a super collector of him, and I wanted that card. And I understood at that moment, I don't care how much the card costs. I want the card, right? So here I'm waiting for the Jermaine Burton super collector to come around and say, that's the card. I want that one of one, because I don't think anybody else is going to even pay close to what I'm asking for it. I'm just hoping that somebody's going to contact me one day and say, hey, I'm the super collector, and we'll get a deal done.
Wait till my 101 auto comes up for sale.
Oh yeah.
Just wait. I will put the most ridiculous high bid ever in on it and just no, I'm going to buy it.
Alrighty, and there's your 101s. Jared Wiley is about to be the next Trey Young market.
Highly doubtful.
No.
I said all the comps on Jared Wiley. If you go look Jared Wiley up right now, whatever the comp is, I set the comp. No matter what it is. I don't care what card it is, I set the comp because I bought them all.
That's hilarious. Next question from my buddy Matt Ryan, and this will be a good Tyler question, I think. Will the gap between LeBron and other superstars of the era continue to get larger, or will it narrow on cards from iconic sets? And he said examples: currently about 4 times Curry, 3 to 4 times Kobe, and 20 times Durant. And I will say, like, I know Matt, and he absolutely spot on with this stuff. So I think that's interesting because sheesh. I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. I have no idea.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's a little bit intriguing because it's a little card dependent.
Sure.
If Curry is the one that I think where the market will close, and it's not that big a multiple for certain specific Curry rookie cards because he has this unique situation where the quality control was so poor on his rookie cards because Topps was losing the license. The Bowman cards got thrown into Topps products, and high grades are next to impossible. And that's also when Topps used to do the fun thing where they made the back of the card black and it chipped like hell.
Yeah.
So next to impossible to grade. So from that perspective, those will be I think will be pretty tight in the long run. Talking about their iconic rookie cards, the thing that I don't know will tighten is somebody like Curry and even Durant, right? They don't have these really interesting second, third year cards, meaning the second year black refractors that you had in Topps Chrome as such a premium product, and LeBron's second, third, fourth year that you kind of have in even the Kobe and the Jordan market with the inserts and the refractors. So that's a little different because you had that weird changeover in product. But you grab some early Curry autos and the first product right with flawless, but nobody values that like they do exquisite, right? Which was when LeBron was a rookie, and that was the release of exquisite. So I don't know if it'll tighten 100%, but I think there will be some tightening of it. Also, I think, and then part of this is just my opinion in basketball in general, when we get 30 years down the road, I think there will be some people who claim that this was as much Steph Curry's era as it was LeBron's era because he changed basketball probably more.
Yeah, when I went to like when I was reading this question, I thought if there was anyone to narrow the gap, it would be Curry. Yeah. And I also think it's because I guess you don't know what the Lakers and Luka right now, and then see what they can do. But I would say Curry's career is not fully written yet. I think there's still an opportunity for them to do something. Like I really do. So yeah, I think there's that's still in play too for Curry. I think that could matter.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody ever finds the Topps Chrome Superfractor, it's gonna be the most one of the most expensive cards of all time. Probably the most expensive basketball card of all time.
Yep.
So
Yeah. And then Ken, you got anything to put into that one, or
No.
I know? Okay.
No. I think we're gonna stop there too. We're at an hour and 25. So.
Okay, that's fine. But I was gonna say it's literally one last question.
All right.
Literally one more.
Go ahead.
From Blaze Landry on Instagram. We can go really quick with this because we've touched on this a few times. What are some of the biggest do's and do nots of setting up at a card show? Just give your top 3. Go.
go, Ken.
Some of the biggest do's and do nots. Do's, setting up, just be prepared, know the values of your cards, and present your cards like a storefront. Like this is your storefront that people are coming to buy from. And if it's just looking like, a mess, it's tough. It's tough to make sales that way. I like to price my cards. I know we've talked about this. There's people on and off that. To me, a big do is to price the cards, especially at busy shows. People know where you're at and where you're starting. If it's a slow show and people are just kind of walking by and glancing in, it doesn't matter probably if you have prices or not. But at busier shows, when you're dealing with people, you're better off having prices there. Bring change, have change for people to be able to break change. It's like the worst thing. Like, I hate, you show up to a show and the guy at the table next to you is like, hey, do you have 2 10s for a 20? You have 4 5s for a 20? You have, and I'm like, I prepared ahead. I brought all my change. I'm ready to make change for people. And this is your first sale of the day. I mean, did you not think that you were going to need to, you were going to get big bills? So I think just overall, the biggest do is just be prepared. Go in being prepared.
Also, just really quick, as we just talked about how Curry's story is not written and everything, I just got a notification on my phone. It's in the 3rd quarter with 5 minutes left, and he has 10 threes. He's 4 away from the single game 3-point record right now, as we just talked about that. So that's something too.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add real quick on the card shows before we go is be friendly. Greet your customers. Look like you want to be there. Nothing is worse than walking up to a table and seeing somebody just totally focused on something else and not engaged in the show. Do that, and then all the other things Ken said as well.
And then the one thing I would add for dues is get your coffee. Get your coffee for the show.
Have somebody set up to be able to do that coffee run for you.
That's right. That's right. Invaluable.
All right. This weekend, Tyler, we're together, right? We're at Chicopee show on Sunday.
Yes, the 413 card show in Chicopee.
Yeah, we'll be set up there. Saturday, I think I'm going to go to the Enfield show. I don't know what you have planned. Are you doing a show Saturday?
No, I don't think I'm going to do much of anything on Saturday. Might go to the driving range, hit golf balls. So nice. Jordan, I can play golf with Jordan at some point.
Where at? Let me know.
All right, and I will be back. I did not have an episode on Sunday, so I'll be back with a new episode Sunday. I'll be recapping the 413 card show in Chicopee, and we will be back next Thursday with a brand new episode. Get your questions in, and remember, if you want to be part of the listener spotlight at the end of your question, say you're available, and we'll reach out to you. Anything else to add, fellas, before we end?
Go bid on my Caitlin Clark card. It ends Sunday night. I will be nervously sweating it out in my house all weekend. So, yeah. No need to go to a card show for me. So, yeah.
All right, fellas, another great episode. We'll see you soon.
See ya.
See you, everybody.